Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us for our EFC Plus and comparing the financial award letter today. So we're going to look at a few things today. One, we're going to review the process, kind of where we are, what we've done so far, and what's going to be coming forward for both the parents and if you're an advisor, how you need to coach your clients. We also want to review how the award letter was determined and look at the various ways to play. And then the student's role. I actually look at this, and this is a partnership now. It's so expensive for many families, and the students need to understand there's a sense of responsibility and a consequence to their decisions, but they don't see the financial consequence. That's one of the things that we do with our EFC Plus tools, is to be able to show you the financial consequences and have an engagement of the process so they can see what it looks like at graduation. We're trying to create that transparency to help you focus on the financial outcomes of this, very important financial decision for both the parents and the students. Just a quick review of who I am. I think most of you signed up through our newsletter, and please pass that along. That would be helpful. But I'm a fee-only financial advisor that specializes in the entire college funding process. That's what makes me different. I take you from how to save for college all the way to student loan repayment and loan forgiveness. We're also the developer of EFC Plus software. It's the first comprehensive solution to college affordability and paying for college. I have a book and have spoken at various conferences on this topic. Just want to give a quick review of what we've accomplished so far, where you should be in the process. We've gone through the application process. We've completed the FAFSA form. If you have not completed the FAFSA form, or your clients have not completed the FAFSA form, I highly recommend that everyone complete the FAFSA form. It's going to help with your debt structure as we go forward, and it's just not an undergraduate decision. I would have everyone, again, recommend that you complete the FAFSA form so that you qualify for the direct staff for loans. You have an EFC number. Those numbers you qualified your numbers to understand how good they are, and then you've received your acceptance and some of your award letters. Now, all of those may not have been received yet. We're going to actually jump ahead a little bit when we get to the award analysis part, but the schools don't have to have that until April 1st. So some of you, may still be seeing award letters coming in, still waiting for a few different, scenarios that may happen, and also maybe the negotiations of that process. Things that will be coming up, though, that you need to be doing is you have to make your decision by May 1st. Actually, that may be before then. If you're going to the large state schools, the sooner you get your money in, the better your housing opportunities are. So I would recommend, if you've made that decision, to make the deposit as soon as you can. With the DRT system, which is the data retrieval tool, which works between the FAFSA and the IRS system, there's a process that the schools go through that verify the information. So once you've been accepted, once you have committed to the schools will go through a verification process. Some of you may be audited by that process, and they'll ask for additional information. But now with the DRT system, it does make it a little more smoother. You don't have to submit your tax returns and that type of information. You also get back from the schools an estimate. So the award letter is an estimate of what they're projecting. They're going to then ask you, once you've committed, what items do you want? So an example would be, maybe you qualify for this federal work study, and maybe you don't want that. That will be taken off your award letter, your final bill in that situation. But then you'll go back, send that back to the schools. The schools will then send you a final bill and also your payment opportunities. So there's different versions of that you maybe want to select from. So I just want to address a few things within the award letter. Now that the IRS system is now linked to the FAFSA process through the DRT system, it has made it better and smoother. Now, for some of you, again, there's a few exceptions to that rule, and we also had the blind submission this year, so you'll need to see how those numbers have come to play. We're seeing a compression. In the past, many of the award letters did not come out until the end of March, but now with prior, you're seeing more of a rolling acceptance, rolling award letter process. With prior also, if you've had a significant change of what your FAFSA was submitted through a divorce, a separation, maybe a loss of job, maybe a downsizing, this would be a time to go back, and if your current financial situation is very different from the tax year of 2016 that was submitted, you need to go back to those schools and appeal and explain to them. When you go through that process, I would highly recommend that you make it short, make it sweet, and give it some numbers with it. So if you have a loss of job, or now you've been divorced or separated, what's been the financial impact to you in comparison to what was submitted in 2016, which is your base FAFSA year for this upcoming school year. As I said, any changes in that financial position, and again, this would then be verified. Now, in some cases, if you need to verify or have information that can be documented. So an example would be if now you are separated, but you're still living in the same household, you're going to need to show that there are separate addresses. That could be a utility bill, that could be a cable bill, but you have to show the proof of there's a separation there. I also want to address the emotional part of this discussion. You know, what most of us don't understand, and the students don't understand this, is the college is really a business. And during the application process and the admission process, you did your college visits. The school said you need to apply. We have plenty of financial aid, and everyone gets their hopes up. But it really is a business. And what you need to look at it is they have to build a new team every year. There's kind of a revolving door. So even though they make that open statement, the schools work off the law of large numbers. If your child or your student hasn't gotten into the school that they wanted to, it may not be their fault. It could be that they're applying for sciences and they needed business majors this year, or vice versa. There could be a whole set of reasons. They are looking for more first-generation graduates or students this year than they were for people that had a college degree or parents that had a college degree. What happens in this process is on the front end, we only talk about generalities. We make it very broad. In reality, behind the scenes, when they're making those award letter decisions or the acceptance letters, it's very specific. And that's never explained to you in this process. And this is where some of the emotion comes into play, and parents and students get very upset. And this is probably the first time that you've talked about money. As you go through this, many parents, as they go through this process, and the students, money's not discussed. We all hope, and they promote that we're going to, we had X millions of dollars of financial aid last year. And we all hope that we're going to get the money we need to go to those specific universities. And many times that can also be disappointing because it's not explained to you at the very beginning. So one of the things you need to do to make the best college decision, in my eyes, is the schools will only give you information 1 year at a time. Our process and our view is that you need to look at this over the 4 years. And especially if you have multiple children in your family, depending on where they are on the time frame. So having a timeline, looking over multiple years, you may not qualify for aid this first year, but now because you have a second child that's going to come on board, your financial aid position is going to change in those outer years. That school could be affordable. And that's one of the things that many families overlook. You can't just take that first year and separate or multiply it by 4 and expect that's what you're going to be paying. And we're going to see the details that you need to review before you make that decision. Understanding the school's gifting policy. How much of need do they typically meet? What's that gift aid? You've gotten the first year and only 1 year, but now understanding what that may look like if you have other children coming in and out, and what's the parts of your financial award letter are absolutely critical. The other part is, understanding what you have is what you're going to be paying, but you need to move it to the next level also is how you're going to pay the bill. And this is where it gets into cash flow. I have X amount of dollars I've saved. I can afford X amount of dollars per year. How does that plan out? Because what's going to happen is your funding shortfalls will be the debt you're going to take on, and your debt structure is going to drive your loan repayment or your child's loan repayments in the future. So understanding both the what and the how in this process is very, very important. The biggest problem is that you're going to see inconsistencies in the award letters. There's not a standard format. The government's been trying to do that for years. The schools have been non-compliant. And with the EFC Plus tool, you get a consistent format. You're able to compare apples and apples all in one place. But that is another problem that many of you may be facing. So just want to give you a quick review of how the process works, what you need to be looking at, how it was determined. Some of you may have come in through us not here in our prior presentations. But the way that the process works, it's cost of attendance, and that will be unique to every student based on the majors they're considering in the school they're going to, minus your expected family contribution, and that could be the federal methodology or the institutional, is what you qualify for need-based aid. Let me talk about one issue there that many of you may be facing, and these are the schools, the highly selective schools. They required what was called the CSS profile. They have the institutional methodology. The only EFC number that you saw was your federal methodology. In many cases, that EFC, that institutional EFC, is a higher number. Let's say your federal EFC number was $40,000 and you were looking at that $65,000 school. Well, you thought you qualified for $25,000 of need-based aid, but because the school used the institutional methodology and included maybe a portion of your home equity, your true EFC number for that school was maybe 55,000, and you only qualify for 10,000. So that also can be part of the emotional expectations you had and not fully understanding the process. Your award letter will also include the merit aid, and this is going to be important. Separating the scholarships, make sure you understand the difference in the merit area, which is the free money, of what is true merit and what is need-based aid. Often schools will put in scholarships, and you need to understand, is that a recurring scholarship or is a need-based scholarship based on my EFC, and that may change every year. So that's a very important part. And then what's the school meet of need in most cases? And then we have the next part will be your self-help, which is your loans and work studies. These are the components of the award letter you need to break out. The most important part, or two most important parts, is the expectations on what EFC number was used based on the school that you apply to, and then separating what is the free money between what is truly merit and what is need. And with the merit money, please check and make sure you understand what are the requirements of that each year and explain that to the student or child. That's also another thing that's often overlooked. You receive that $15,000 or $10,000 merit scholarship, which is just marvelous, but that's going to require a 3.0 or a 3.3 over the 4 years or each year to get that renewed. Some schools will prorate it if you come under that number, but in many cases, if you don't maintain that GPA, it's lost, and that can be an expensive mistake. So I just went through that as we separated the financials. The award letter in multiple parts, we just went through the details of that. But understanding your true out-of-pocket costs, there's different components there. What is billed by the school? What is your personal expenses? And understanding how the details of the EFC and your specific award letter is brought together. Some schools, as I said to you, use the same terms and have a different meaning behind the scenes. And this is where you need to get clarity when you're comparing your schools side by side. As an example, what's in your cost of attendance? There's certain things that will be directly billed by the school. So the tuition, the room and board, the fees are all billed and paid to the school directly. Now, in your cost of attendance and part of your award components are other things. Your books, your personal expenses, travel. Now, what's not included is the parents' expenses as part of your cost of attendance, but that will be also a cost that you'll be incurred. So if your child goes further away, that you may need to take an airplane to get there or fly and then stay for hotels, versus if they live within a 2-hour radius, maybe you just need to drive up for the day and come back. These are other things you need to look for and consider as you build your cost of attendance. And everything is unique now, as we're starting to see. Some schools don't provide that cost of attendance until later, until their budgets are finalized. But we're also seeing a trend where it's a la carte. And what I mean by that is the accounting degree versus the pre-med program have different costs and fees. That's absolutely critical that you break that up. We pick the dorm versus the suite as a room and board program. I picked the 18 meal plan versus the 15 meal plan. All those things are unique to each student that need to be addressed. As I briefly mentioned before here, the merit scholarships are also important. There's an academic or special skill that the students bring to the school that they're willing to pay for. That could be your GPA, it could be a community service, it could be specific things. In most cases, there's a separate letter that comes to the student that's going to give you the 4-year commitment to that. So it's a $10,000 per year. They would say, oh, you received a $40,000 scholarship. Make sure you understand the details of those, GPA, you need to be a full-time student. All those type of things need to be part of that letter or understanding of what that's going to do. I'll give you an example. My daughter was a tennis player, and she took a semester off to do a co-op, and she was not a full-time student, and we actually had to pay for that course or two because the scholarship was not available because she was not a full-time student during that semester. So there are type of things that happen that you need to understand how that's going to work. And sometimes there's some additional requirements that the athletes will face, such as how many credits they need per semester to maintain that scholarship. And there's also NCAA rules that are important there too. Here's one of the tricks that happen that you need to make sure you're aware of, which we talked about a few minutes ago, is that need-based scholarship. So when it says a grant, it typically means that it's need-based. But if it just says scholarship and you haven't received that second letter or that independent letter, you need to go back to the schools when you're comparing all the schools together in one place. What type of scholarship is this? Is this a need-based scholarship, or is this a merit-based scholarship that I've listed on my award letter or in that final bill? Because if that is a need-based scholarship, that number could move up and down each year depending on how your EFC number is going to move over the 4 years that you're looking at. Again, not taking the first year, but looking at it individually first in detail and understanding the risk of that going out in multiple years is absolutely critical in your best decision. And the best place to do that is call the financial aid office and ask for clarity on, we received this scholarship. Make sure you have your child's ID number. Most of the cases you'll have that. And we're seeing more and more of this being issued out as a electronic submission or electronic notification than it is paper or mailed version. I want to cover the student loans also, as you structure the debt is becoming more and more important. In most cases, I would highly recommend that every family complete the FAFSA form, because by doing that, no matter what your financial aid position is, they will qualify for the Stafford loan, the direct Stafford loan. When you start looking at postgraduate and understanding the cash flows and when we need that, there's a annual limit and also a lifetime limit. This is one of the issues when you don't do the cash flows. If we now, in most cases, we would not take debt as long as we can, and we run out to say junior or senior year, and now we need money, the student's going to be limited on how much they can get. That doesn't accumulate. So if you now take it each year, that will reduce the risk the parent will have to take, or the amount that they will be linked to, and that's going to be important for their financial future. On the direct Stafford, there's two types. There's the subsidized loans, which means the interest will be paid by the government, and unsubsidized means that there's interest being accrued by that type of loan while they're in school. So there are the two differences. To get the subsidized loan, you need to have needs. So you may have that middle income family that has an EFC number of $40,000, and on one award letter that say state school that said $35,000, you saw a $5,500 unsubsidized loan all in one place. That's because you don't have any financial need there. Versus you now put a private school in, you could see that was $60,000. You'll qualify for both a subsidized and unsubsidized loan. That's why they'll be separated. So the difference there is do you have need at the schools that you've applied for? So that will create the consistency. Then you have other options, which are the Parent Plus loans. You could do a private student loan, which the parent will need to co-sign. What people don't realize is once we cross over that Stafford loan, the parent will be directly, indirectly responsible for that loan legally. So as an example, the Parent Plus loan is legally the parent's loan. Even though you negotiate with the child to pay you back, legally it is your loan. On the private side, in most cases, the parent will be the co-signer. When they are the co-signer, if the child should default, then you will be called into that situation. And then there could be other loans that you may consider, such as a loan from your 401k or home equity or other issues. Now, the one issue with the other loans is the financial aid directors cannot discuss those options for you. So that's one of the downsides of this process. That starts moving into the personal financial areas, and there's other risks there that they can't address legally to give you the best advice. The appeal process. The media promotes this. What you need to understand here, it is not as easy. The schools have a very sophisticated process, and yet everyone can negotiate with the schools. I just want to warn you about the expectations there. Some schools will negotiate. It really depends on what's happening from their side on the yield. So as they have put out their award side, and we talked about this being a business, they've issued out the number of awards to each of the students they wanted to attract to the school. They have an estimate of how many people will be coming. And if they are falling behind that number, then they will try to fill those seats and maybe be more aggressive. But if their yield is good and they, filling all their seats as they expected, then they may not need to be proactive in attracting more students. So it will really depend year on year and how that will work. Again, the media promotes this a lot, and often it can be misleading for you. Now, if you should appeal, and we talked about some of the reasons why that should happen, write a brief article, keep it non-emotional. So just say that your student is applying to schools, whatever, and then explain the reasons why you're appealing it and the number that's applicable. So say you lost your job and your income is down by $50,000, or maybe you received a scholarship from another school that was worth X amount of dollars. Now, when you compare the schools on awards, be careful. Some schools will honor a competitive school, some schools will not. So these are all important of keeping that in place. When you write these letters out to the people, keep it short. Remember the reader. They're getting thousands of these letters. So the better you can communicate that, as I can't speak today, the better off you will be. Also, remember, if there's a change in your financial position, I would recommend that you try to get your taxes done as soon as you can, because in many cases they will require that as part of their review of your change in financial position. So there are things that you need to consider as you go through this process that are very, very important. So now we're going to take some screenshots of how we approach this. This is our senior award tool that helps you compare the schools, and it's actually part of the EFC Plus suite of tools. The first thing is customizing their cost of attendance. So here we can see the tuition, room and board, books, building a custom number for you. What is your child's expectations that they will have in this scenario? So understanding your cost of attendance and the details of that cost of attendance. Now, what we provide here is what the school's historical average is, and then what you expect to do. And a lot of the state schools don't provide that because they have to go through their budget before it becomes available. So you may not be able to get a good number there. The next part is understanding the merit information. So breaking the information up, and we talked about this earlier, the merit scholarships, and breaking it up, is it recurring or is it non-recurring? And if you received a merit scholarship, such as a local scholarship from organization, is that reoccurring or individual? Because that's going to affect your numbers going out. So again, we're trying to look at it over 4 years. And then what need-based scholarships did I qualify for? So breaking those up, because the need-based numbers are going to be based on your EFC and how that will change over multiple years. And that's a very, very important process. And then the self-help. So did I receive a subsidized, unsubsidized loan? Did I receive work study? Are the components of that? Maybe there's a state loan that you qualified for. It could be all reasons of how you're going to build this up and pay the bill. And then once you have that, you can compare that. This is showing you what it looks like over 4 years. And in this case, you can see they received a $24,000 merit scholarship, this student. And the yellow part here is the progression of the Stafford loan. So I started $5,500 for freshman year, $6,500 sophomore year, $7,500 junior and senior year. Now, what also happens here in this case is they have a financial gap here. So there's a shortfall because of an EFC change that this student has gotten. But understanding what you're going to be paying is very, very important over the 4 years, and how the award letter is structured. What's most important, though, is how. And this is the missing piece and why I think the student debt crisis has grown the way it is. No one addresses the how, and that is unique to each person. So in this case, this family had $25,000 saved. They can afford $15,000 per year, and the red is their shortfall. Now, that may come from other places, or they're going to have to borrow that money based on the award letter that we just saw in the previous screen. So understanding both the what and the how helps you understand what you can expect to pay and what your child or student's financial future is going to be once they graduate, assuming they graduate on time. And just as a footnote there, the best way to save money is for them to graduate on time. And with the national average less than 40%, that is a goal that every parent should have and every child should be aware of. So once you put on all that to each of the schools that you've been accepted to, we then sort it, and it's, again, in a standardized format. It sorts the schools by the most cost effective. Now, the cost effective doesn't mean it's the best choice. When we talk to parents all the time, you're looking at that large state school. You have to envision that child at that state school. Are they going to be able to be in a classroom of 400? Will they graduate on time? As I said, what we don't realize is that they don't graduate on time. You have another year of cost, but what you don't realize is that that child's also lost a year of income. So when you add those two together, that cheaper school by $5,000 or $10,000 a year actually may be more expensive because it's going to take them an extra year to graduate. By having that process in place, by understanding how the standardizing the award letters in a similar place, building your customized cost of attendance, understanding your details, and then seeing those numbers all in one place and seeing what the best value is, then you can add in the non-financial items. So how strong is the academic programs we're considering? Big school, small school, how far away from home? the biggest issue here you need to be looking at is retention also. On top of graduation, how good is that school at retaining the students that attend? The national average is that 35% of the students will transfer. 50% will change majors, or over 50%. So all these will help you improve your decision. As I said, graduate on time, and then looking also, the sooner they can decide what they're going to be, again, using the career centers, and how much education they're going to need to get to where they want to go is critical in the process. And then just not looking at this as experience as a one-year decision. Looking, in the new world for us as parents, we have to envision our child's life at age 25. More and more requiring postgraduate. I'll give you an example. My oldest is a speech pathologist. Once that was decided, and it wasn't on her radar screen when she first went to college, and she ended up at a school that we left at lunch, and this is the flexibility you need to have in your plan, she ended up being a speech pathologist. We knew that she was going to need her master's, and we had that discussion about, who's going to be paying for that, how much debt. Now, by the luck of it, she got a full ride for her master's, so that was not an issue for her. But, she knew that was going to be her financial responsibility. And one of the big things there, as I talked about earlier, is the emotion. People get tied to these schools, especially in this early process. And the biggest reason for transfers, or one of the biggest reasons for transfer, is the financial reason. Is there's a sense of reality that happens that, they maybe didn't perform well, they didn't adjust to that new independence, and now they, it's gotten very, very expensive. Maybe they've lost that scholarship. And again, these are things that you need to be considering or discussing. Just want to give you a quick view of some things to be aware of, and this is, the advantages that our approach has. Again, I'm going to apologize for these screens here. But here you can see, by doing a 4-year, this is the initial award, but because in years 3 and 4 they have a second child, they're actually going to qualify for more financial aid, which is going to help them maybe make this school more affordable by not just taking the first year. We just took the first year, this school would be unaffordable. So this is an oldest child going and a second child that's going to come on board. This is how it graphically would look like of what they're going to be paying over the 4 years. The next scenario is the inverse, is that I have an older brother or sister. This is one that has a senior, and they qualified for a lot of financial aid in that first year. And then years 2, 3, and 4, that oldest child graduates. So multiplying that first year and understanding that the scholarships were need driven, this school would then be, unacceptable in outer years, based on that first year award letter. So these are things that you need to be looking at or be considered. And just taking that first year and multiplying by 4 will typically not work. Here's another example of what some schools, this is not horribly common, but you need to be aware of this. And we've seen this in our clients that have used the tool, is what we call front loading. So you can see the gold section is higher than the second year. Behind the scenes, we actually compare what the school's gifting policy is to what the school's historical average is. So if the scholarship was listed as a need-based scholarship, we're going to take the lower of the two numbers there. And in this case, this would give the client a warning sign to say, hey, you need to go back to that school and ask them, we got a really good deal, we're really excited about coming here, but what are the guarantees that I'm going to get that next year, assuming their EFC number is going to stay the same? Some schools will commit to that award, some schools will not, as long as their GPA. So you need to be careful about that, at least from a risk-reward standpoint, that they could easily see a, rate in this case, a 24 to an 18,000. That would be a $16,000 difference in net cost that those parents would have to absorb. So this is an important part in looking of what it's going to cost you to go to that school over the 4 years. One thing also, we focused a lot on the financial aid process and how to pay. There's a set of other things that, again, the trained financial professionals, and there's not a lot of us, we have a new designation that will be coming out. We currently have about 12 people that are in the program right now that are trained advisors that look at both the taxes, the financial aid process, the various loan repayment options, loan forgiveness, so they can project what your financial future is going to be in this process. And they're all fiduciaries, so they're not selling you the life insurance and the annuities. So that's an important part. To be part of our program, they have to be fiduciaries and act as a fiduciary. But in this case, there's a whole set of strategies that most CPAs and financial advisors don't know and can save the client or the parent thousands and thousands of dollars. We had a high net individual recently that we did a plan for, and we're able to save them over $70,000 between their 3 or 4 children. So again, these are things that weren't discussed, and it had nothing to do with financial aid. It was all their personal finances that they need to look at. And we talked about the loan repayment options and how by taking those debts, the debt structure, which I think is one of the new games in town that we as parents need to get more familiar with, drives their loan repayment. So if we don't structure the debt the right way, either we will be legally tied to that loan and the student will not have as good of repayment options if we went through this. Also want you to be aware or be careful about outside resources. So there's a lot of different myths out there. As an example, grandparents, they want to help and they're going to send a check to the school. If the school catches that and you qualify for need-based aid, they consider that an outside resource and you could lose that need-based financial aid dollar for dollar. So again, be very careful when a grandparent or an outside, it could be an aunt or uncle that wants to help. Be careful how that bill is paid and when they do it. The private scholarships. Now, some of you have maybe searched for the private scholarships, and that's a great thing to do. What you have to realize, if you qualify for need-based aid, in most cases, if you receive a private scholarship, and that private scholarship will now cross you over when you add in the school's award over your need, there will be an adjustment. If they don't exceed that, in most cases, the schools will not take it away. So let me give you an example. If, say, we need it, or our financial need was $15,000, and we got an award letter of $12,000, and then we received a $5,000 private scholarship, the schools would make an adjustment to that because our 12 plus our 5 exceeded our 15. Now, if I received a $1,000 scholarship and now my 12 went to 13, then the schools in most cases will not make an adjustment. It's only when you cross over, in most cases, your financial need where there's an adjustment made. And typically what they'll do is they'll come back to you and ask you which things do you want to take away. So they're the things you need to be aware of when you're getting those private scholarships. Also, when you're doing your cost analysis, is that private scholarship recurring or is it only a one and done? Also, 529 plans in other people's names, when that comes through from a distribution standpoint, from a tax standpoint, if it's not done in the proper timing, that will come in as untaxed income for the student, which then could raise their EFC in the following year. So when you use your other people's 529 plans to pay for your child, this would be a grandparent or an uncle, you need to be careful when you can do that. The tax years and school years do not match up. It's best if you would use those other plan names in their junior and senior year of college. That would avoid that situation, assuming they're going to graduate on time. Also want to talk about the student's responsibility. When they, there's all this stress for them to go away, to, get away from their parents. It's a new sense of independence that they need to do or have. What they don't realize or recognize is the new sense of responsibility for that. They're spending, you're looking at a $25,000 to $30,000 up to a $70,000 commitment to their financial future. They need to understand that financial responsibility and the financial consequences of not doing well. And again, this is an important part, I think, that they need to have discussions. And I think the best way to do that is have them talk to that 25-something. There's a few studies out there we quote often, 54% of the millennials would have made different decisions if they knew the financial consequences. You don't see the financial consequences until after you graduate. And this is where if you can do this earlier, I think it will improve their experiences, improve their outcomes, and do that. In many cases, they don't understand it's an investment in themselves, how well they do. And the difference here is that you as a parent or whatever may have helped them through that. There's a new sense of independence. You're not going to be there. And the two best things to do for them as they get prepared to go away to college is to make sure their study habits are good and that you weren't the person doing all that, and their time management. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of clubs, a lot of freedom that they need to manage once they graduate and once they're at college. So let's look at the education, how that's linked to the financial outcome. There's a few, people are trying to make some generalizations on, we should only take debt up to a certain amount of our income. I really don't think that's the proper approach. Each person's going to be unique in what they need to do. They also have to be happy. But there's a catch-22 there. You also have to understand is what's the demand for the career that the child's going to school for? What's the educational requirements? And, how much demand is there for that career? And what is that going to pay? All those things have to be looked at because that debt that you're going to take on, the income they will have, and their ability to get that job all are a factor on what their financial future will be. So based on their income, will they be able to support the debt that they've taken on to get to where they wanted to go? Is that career in demand? How unique am I? What did I do a co-op? Just like they've gone through the process of applying to these colleges, the schools were looking for uniqueness when they're getting ready to apply for a job, what things do they bring to that employer that they may be looking for? They need to have that scorecard, have a co-op, have an internship, those type of community service activities that they can be doing during their college years to make sure or improve their chances of getting that job. What's the starting salary of the job that they're looking to, and what's the growth potential? And so what is their financial future? Do they want to travel? What's that going to look like when they're 30 or 35? All those things need to be discussed. As I highly recommend, if they're not sure what they want to be, they need to use the career centers. The schools all have very good career centers to either discover what they want to be, or finding those internships to confirm what they think they want to be to what they will be once they graduate. Just want to give you a quick plug here. Here are the different tools. We have our college cost analyzer. Our in-college tool is available, and I think that's when we see that 35% of students transferring, 50% changing majors. There's 20 million people making ongoing decisions there. We're really excited about that tool that's out there. And in May, we should have our last piece, which will be our student loan repair, that will handle both the recent graduate, but more importantly, the person, and this is, we don't really face this or talk about this, is when their life changes, they get married, they get engaged, or they change jobs. There's no good resource right now to help them understand how to repay their student loans the best way, and we will have that solution starting in May. So let me just wrap this up for you. This is one of the most complicated financial decisions parents and students will make in their lifetime. When you look about how complicated the financial aid process is, we've covered today, but you add in the personal financial decisions, so the taxes, the debt structure, the loan repayments, the loan forgiveness, how's that work with what income I'll have and the job that I'm going to have at graduation, it becomes really, really complex and important. So I think that's really, really things that you need to look like. Understanding how your EFC number and your award letter work together is important over the 4 years to make the best decision, and creating a 4-year plan, or a plan to graduation, or plan to career. As I said earlier, looking at the child's age, what do they look like at age 25? How much education do they need? Who's going to pay for that? What's that job pay? Does it qualify for public service loan forgiveness? They could take on that debt structure. A private student loan does not qualify for public service loan forgiveness. It has to be structured under the federal program. These are all things that you need to be considering as you make your decision, and your child needs to understand. Having a focus on the outcome, I think, is absolutely critical. And then using the EFC Plus tool and our newsletter and our different webinars, I think will help the parents and students understand what their financial future will be. Hopefully this helps you today. Again, our whole goal is solving the student debt crisis by focusing on the outcome and helping parents and students graduate on time with manageable debt. That's the goal that we have for our clients and the community information we provide for you as the public, and hopefully that has been helpful. And good luck with your decisions. Have a great day.